Name the valves present in the heart and their functions in the movement of blood in a definite directions. There are 4 valves or 2 sets of valves present in our heart. 2 valves known as aurioventricular valves, which opens only downward, are present between the junction of auricle and ventricles. And the other set of valve is known as arterial or semilunar valve because of their shape, and they open upward. The valve which is present between the junction of right auricle and right ventricle is known as tricuspid because of their 3 cuffs, and the valves which is present between the junction of left auricle and left ventricle is known as mitral valve or bicuspid valve because they consist of 2 cusps. And the valve which is present at the junction of right ventricle and pulmonary artery is known as semilunar or pulmonary valve, and the valve which is present between the junction of left ventricle and aorta is known as aortic valve or semilunar valve. Now, when the 2 auricles contracts, then they pushes the blood from auricle into ventricles via these aurioventricular valves, which opens only downward. So, the opening of the valve is due to the contraction of the chambers of the heart. Now, it's time for ventricles to contract or systole and auricles to be in relaxed position or in diastole. Now, when the right ventricles and the left ventricle contracts, these aurioventricular valves slum and thus prevent the backflow of the blood into the auricles. The opening of the valve in opposite direction is prevented by the muscles chordie tendoni. So, the aurioventricular valves can open only downward. Right ventricles and left ventricle contracts, these aurioventricular valves slum so that the blood can flow only in one way and prevent backflow of the blood to auricles. As the ventricles contracts, the volume of the ventricles decreases and the pressure of the blood inside the ventricle increases. Then it pumps the blood through the arteries. The right ventricle pumps the impure blood to pulmonary artery via pulmonary valve or semilunar valve, and the left ventricle pumps pure or oxygenated blood into aorta via semilunar or aortic valve. And now it's time for ventricles to be in diastole or in relaxed position. When the ventricles are in diastole or in relaxed position, these arterial or semilunar valve slum and thus prevents the backflow of blood from artery to ventricles. In this way, the valves helps in the flow of the blood in only one direction. We have to remember one thing, that this aurioventricular valve or tricuspid or bicuspid valve opens only downward. It cannot open upward, and it slum in this way, and the arterial valve or semilunar valve opens upward and it closes or slum in this way, and thus we can see that the sound is produced by a heart by closing or slum of this valve. This slum of the aurioventricular valve produces a sound which is known as lub, and the semilunar or the arterial valves open only upward. And when the blood from the ventricles gushes into the artery, then this arterial or semilunar valve slum so that there is no backflow of the blood from the artery into the ventricles. In this way, the closing of the arterial or semilunar valve produces the second sound known as dub. So, there is always a sound in the heartbeat. This sound is called lub and this sound is called dub. Lub and dub sound is always heard in a stethoscope.